I was sitting in this cute little cafe in a booth, and the waitress came over to fill my ice water in my glass. And as she was pouring the ice water, she was looking across the room and having a conversation with another server. And the glass became full and started overflowing with ice water all over the booth, all over my lap. It was very cold, but I found myself hesitating from alerting her because she was in the middle of a conversation and I didn't want to interrupt and be rude. And it was that old pattern of people pleasing that was creeping back up, that indoctrination that I grew up with, where it's seen as being a good person to put personal needs on the back burner, to put needs, wants, desires, what's best for self, well-being of self behind the needs of others. And certainly being selfless has its place, and it's a wonderful, honorable quality. It has its place in partnerships. It definitely has its place in a parent-child dynamic. You know, if you've worked a 12-hour day and then stay up half the night to sew a Halloween costume for a child so they're prepared the next day, that type of self-sacrifice is appropriate and honorable and commendable. And it's all about proper balance, not totally sacrificing what's best for self for others. You know, it shouldn't be a complete compromise or loss for self to do good for others. And when you grow up in a family dynamic that's also influenced by a faith dynamic, where we're taught and indoctrinated as children that to be a good person, that means you forfeit what's best for yourself and do what's best for the greater group, the greater good, that can be a pattern that requires breaking as adults. And unfortunately, children, teenagers, young adults that are naive, vulnerable, and don't have a lot of life experience are used in targeting situations, in gang stalking situations, by preying upon them and taking advantage of the indoctrination within them that's already occurred in their family group, their church group, their community, where children are being indoctrinated to believe if someone is different from us, if they have a different culture or a different belief system, they live a different lifestyle, it's okay to talk about them, to bully them, to treat them differently or like they're less than. You know, if you come from a faith group where if someone leaves the faith group, it's normalized at a very young age, and children observe adults speaking badly about that person, targeting that person that's left the church group. Or same thing with a family dynamic. You know, this family member, it's normalized that we all talk about them and whisper behind their back and mock them and criticize them. That indoctrination is played upon very often in targeting and gang stalking situations where children are being used to commit criminal acts in our gang stalking situations. You know, if a child is the one doing the vandalizing, the harassing, the following, the monitoring, the tracking, if a child's the one ripping out the garden and smashing the windows, leaving weird things on a porch, it's a lot less consequence for the adults involved. They're hands off, and the consequence is less likely to occur when a child is the one committing the act. And it also places a targeted individual in an even more vulnerable position, because if they respond to a child that's destroying their property, it can very easily be twisted, and that parent can take their child to law enforcement and say, yeah, this neighbor yelled at them. They just accidentally smashed in all their windows. And it's very easy to support the false narrative and to twist the script and again further that false narrative of a targeted individual. So it's quite genius when children are used to accomplish these gang stalking harassment goals, this organized harassment. And unfortunately, children of the targeted individual, regardless of age, will often be preyed upon to be used against their own parent, to be weaponized against their own parent. And imagine the pressure if you have a trusted aunt or uncle or grandparent or church leader or coach or teacher, large community group, large extended family in great numbers, many adults, encouraging a young person with very little life experience to lie on their parent or to make false accusations or provide false testimony or false affidavits. It's quite sad, that extended family and church members would have no problem causing permanent damage to a parent-child bond, but to prey upon a vulnerable young person and misuse that trust that they feel for a relative or a coach or whoever to attack their own parents. And you'll also see the targeters use their own children to provide false statements and make false claims if it serves the greater good. You know, if it's a scandal, if it's a theft, if those parents have committed crimes that they're trying to cover up, they'll sacrifice their own children and get them to lie and make false statements if it means preserving the greater group, the grandparents or the aunts and the uncles or the parents that have committed criminal acts, to protect them. And that indoctrination within those kids makes them think that they're doing the right thing because A, they've been taught that this is normalized, this is how we behave toward others that are different, and B, I have 20 different family members and community members pressuring me to do this. And I think it's just really important to highlight the fact that often in gang stalking, often in targeting, children, teenagers, vulnerable young adults with very little life experience that don't necessarily know better are being taken advantage of and used in these situations to negate consequence and to negate consequence for the larger, greater good. And it's a cruel misuse of their young, youthful spirits and their lack of life experience and their lack of understanding what the legal consequence could be for them if they lie or provide false statements. And the fact that the adults that they trust, their own family members, would take advantage of that trust and use those kids when those kids may not even know that they're being used for a theft or, you know, RICO crimes or discrimination, hate crimes, whatever the case may be. But I think it's really important that we speak on the fact that children are in fact used in this way in gang stalking situations.